Well, good afternoon. I'm Mike Warner. Sorry for the delay. It was cutting off my head, and as you can all see, I have a huge head, so it's hard to fit it on the screen. So I'm going to talk about some things that necessarily, I think it affects everybody in this room, but it's really more about what's been going on the dealer side, on the retail side, and the wholesale side from a technology standpoint. But whether you're a vendor or a dealer, or a provider of wholesale, it's all relevant to you, because eventually we're all going to have to be able to exist in this space, and it's really going to boil down to who can fit the new business model that's coming, which is this really efficient model of both retail and wholesale. And if you think about, let me see here, where we've been. So give you an idea who I am. I've been around for a long time. I don't like to date myself too bad, but probably too long. Some people tell you I've been around too long. Spent the first 15 years on the retail side. Worked my way up from, came out of college, got a job selling cars that was only supposed to be for a summer, and like the rest of you, here I am, right? I don't think any of us ever set out to be in the car business. It's a calling and gets in your blood, it never gets out. So was fortunate enough, worked my way up through all the different ranks, F&I, GSM, GM, so on and so forth. Ended up running a dealer group in the Northeast, about 6 stores, had full P&L responsibility from front and back. From there, I got into the software side of things, which really got interesting in a hurry. Back in 2000, 2001, started a little company called DealerWire. We were when Dale was doing Empower, which is now V-Auto, Bruce Thompson had AAX. We were doing the same thing out of little Lebanon, New Hampshire, and ended up selling to DealerTrack in 2006. And here I am today after a couple other reiterations. But excited to be here and happy to be here. And really excited to talk about one thing real quick. I don't expect you to read all the words on here, but one thing that I've been seeing and seeing a lot of some of the better mentors that I've been fortunate to work with, both on the retail side and the wholesale side, about this whole efficiency model. And most of you, whether you work in the dealership or you provide a service to a dealership or to a dealer group, you're probably seeing it as well. And they're getting a little more demanding, right? Because they want to be more efficient in what they do and what they have. So when you think about whether it's a CRM, how many of you are in retail dealers do we have in here? And you have a CRM, right? You have a DMS. You have an inventory management solution, right? You probably have something back in service like X-Time, right? Or something along those lines. You have AutoTrader. You have Cars.com, right? Car Gurus, So you think about it, all these things, right? We could rattle them off. And just the amount of money that we spend on each one of these is significant. So you add them all together and you think about, are we using every one of these platforms to its fullest potential? And is there opportunity to kind of get some of these platforms to coexist so they could be even more powerful, right? So when you start to think about it from that aspect, some of the talking points I wanted to talk about today, so this will shock some of you because I am with an auction company now. But the whole thing, to be able to look at these 3 internal opportunities when we're looking to acquire inventory, right? And if you think about it from a dealership perspective, what's the best way? What is the most cost-effective and most efficient way to get inventory for your front line? That's through the front door, right? Whether it comes in on a trade, through the service lane, right? You think about how many ROs you close out a day in your service lane, and then you think about what you spend per lead from these third-party providers. Are you talking every service customer? Maybe just half your service customers? Because if you close in 50, 60, 100 ROs, I don't even want to know what you guys do in service because it's probably in the thousands. But that, to me, and from what we're seeing more and more of dealers that are really concentrating and focusing their efforts on entertaining, and taking care of those service customers to get that appraisal to the front of the store while they're in for service. And a lot of them are starting to initiate it. So we'll talk about that a little bit. But also the CRM. There's a lot of great campaigns to be used in those CRM programs, and it's still shocking to me how little they're used and how the lack of consistency there is in those. And we're going to talk about that too, because the CRM could feed both of those other two when you think about the service lane and the front door. But also a change in habits, how a very simple change in habits, not going out and buying anything else, not going out and getting any new technologies or signing up for any more $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month services, just doing everything you can with what you have, and usually that's just a change in a couple of habits can really get the ball rolling. Winning smarter acquisitions, we're going to talk about that, winning more at the door. increasing win rates and some of the technology that's out there to be able to do that. That's really starting to take the risk out of trying to buy more business at the door. Because most of the time when you go into some of these stores where you see wholesale loss or you see a past of aging units and so on and so forth, it's usually because they bought some business, right? Anybody can go out and increase their win rates on their trade-ins today. Your guys could do it at their stores. You put all the money in the car, and then it becomes a really big issue in 45 to 60 to 70 days. But we'll worry about it then, right? But it's very easy to do. And a couple of the case studies I want to talk about, the service lane and some of those acquisition ideas. So when you start to look at the internal lane, right? The inventory management systems, right, that are geared towards appraisals today look at three major areas, and that's the store performance, the current need, and then the market, right? So what's really good about that is previously, in other lives, we would have to search for a lot of this. A lot of it wasn't even available, but now really at the scan of a VIN on our cell phones, we can get, how have I done with that car? Is it a good car for me? Do I currently need the car? And what's the current market status? Days supply. How many listings are on CarGurus, AutoTrader, Cars.com? How many were there last month and aren't there anymore? Because that's how they're compiling these market days supply to give you a better idea of what am I going to have to compete with if I take the car in, and then what is a good number for me to be at to be in that competitive area if we do own it, okay? Now, if you're looking at this from an efficiency standpoint, and what I try to get, a lot of dealers to understand, and when you're talking to your managers and when we're trying to train up good managers, if you can't check the box on at least one of these, what does that car instantly become? Because the biggest mistakes we make is we don't identify whether or not that's a good retail car or that's just a wholesale car for me. There is such thing as taking a car in and, look, it's wholesale. I'm not going to keep it. And the sooner you make that decision, the better off you're going to be, because they're drastically two different numbers that you're going to put in that appraisal. So what we try to get them to understand is use these silos, right? And if you can't check at least one of these boxes, you've got to be looking at this car from in a different light, because it will come back to haunt you if it's not one of these three. Preferably, you're checking at least two of these three boxes, right? So when we look at from the service lane perspective, okay, and all the technology that we have back there, and you'll see over on the left, this is appraised 40%. Real quick, just do some math for those of you that are on the retail side. How many ROs do you do in a day? Are you open 6 days a week, right? So if you do 30, 40, 50 ROs, open 6 days a week, that's 300 opportunities, 300 vehicles that are coming in, getting serviced, and leaving your dealership on a weekly basis. That's 15,000 cars a year, right? If 40% of those, and I use that number because it's it's a single point, it's one location, but they have many, many franchises. It's an auto mall in Langhorne, Pennsylvania. And I won't give you the name because I promised them I wouldn't, but they've been doing a very interesting thing with their service department for the last 4 years. And this year, they're going to sell 1,500 cars out of service. In 4 years, they started at zero. They started with a banner back in the service department. If you're interested, we'll appraise your car for free. You want to get current market value of your car. All these different things that they put. $150 banner they put back in their service lane. And then they started, a couple people came up, they bought a couple cars, added to the front line, they traded a couple of cars, it started to pick up a little bit. They started to spiff the service writers. They would provide them with, this is what we're looking for. Used car manager, go back there, give them a buy list every day, or every other day, a couple times a week. If you get a customer in, matches this, let me know, I want to come back and talk to them. I want to appraise the car. And that started to pick it up even a little bit more. Now they have 2 full-time salespeople that work in service. They have a whole other section to the service department, which is just for the service lane customers to go and get their cars appraised, and they work the deals back there. They have an F&I manager that works exclusively back there. Very non-threatening, laid-back atmosphere. For those of you that have worked in retail before, one of the things that was always the biggest complaints that I had, and it was one of my complaints, is, what do you mean you want me to come in at 7:30 and work the service line as salespeople? You couldn't get them to go back there and work. Just to meet and greet the customers, because most of them are your customers. Great way to build a relationship. They have just the opposite. Now they're fighting over who gets to go back there and work in service. But if you think about just a couple things, the service log, right? The CRMs we talked about. And now the ability, so if I could take my service log, because most of you that have service departments, do you schedule 3, 4, 5 days out, a week, 2 weeks out in some cases? A lot of the franchise stores I go to, the service department is packed, and they're on an appointment-only basis. So you know what's coming in. So if 60 to 70% of those customers are previous customers, they're already in your CRM, so you already should have some equity, a good idea on who's in equity and who's not. So why wouldn't you want to take that service log and scrub it through your equity report? So your used car manager would know, okay, out of those 65 people coming into service today, we got 17 in equity. Somebody better be talking to these folks, right? Somebody better be trying to appraise that car. So what they've been doing is very simple. The soft approach, their goal, and in some cases, in many days, there will be as many as 40% of those service customers they have coming in, because by the time they get done scrubbing that service log to the equity report, using that soft approach, because they do have customers that come to them. So really the idea here is to take a couple of those different technologies. So you think about your CRM, Excite, your DMS, all of those things are working together when you're scrubbing that list. And you think about it, it's not expensive, right? You don't have to add anything. All you have to do is get somebody to physically, do one simple thing, and that's, here's the service log. How many of those customers are previous customers? All of that stuff, all of that data we already have, right? And so that ability very quickly could turn your service department into a whole nother, a whole nother retail opportunity when you think about, again, $35, $45 per lead a lot of times that we pay to these third-party services, right? And if you could just get 15 to 20% of your service line customers into an appraisal, how cost-effective that is compared to what it was doing, right? So again, ooh, that got really loud when I get that close. The CRM campaigns, a lot of things that you see. These are getting, I'm going to say over the last 2 years, I've seen a big improvement on the usage of these. So providing, buyers, a lot of you have buyers out there, a lot of you have, used car managers or general sales managers that do the buying, whether it's online or in lane. But one of the things is just getting them access to these equity reports on a regular basis. Because it's very important when these customers hit that, that Mendoza line, if you will, and it really becomes a viable car, right? And you really want to get that customer back in, because chances are, if you don't, the last thing you want them doing is wandering somewhere else, right? Because somebody will get that business from you. So having your BDC be able to schedule these appraisal appointments, right? See a lot of that going on. And these are really cool because I tell you, some of these trade-up programs and these appraisal appointments, like Black Friday, I know there's a couple of dealers that are getting these campaigns ready for the Thanksgiving weekend, and they're also doing the same thing the week of Christmas. And what they do is they just target those customers that are in equity that they know they can trade up. They can either get them close to a payment or at a payment that they're at now and get them into a new car or a newer car. And scheduling that appointment, and really, the hook is, it's right around Thanksgiving, it's right around Christmas. There's a huge mall not too far from them. They go out and get all these gift cards. They do a direct mail and then a follow-up with the BDC campaign. And the target list is very specific. It's these customers that are in equity. And the whole hook is, why don't you come in? We're having a holiday sale. Previous customer, this is, we got some great ideas for you. We know where you need to be payment-wise. We're very confident we can get there. We just need you to come in, pick out the next car that you want to drive home in. Oh, and by the way, we have these $250 Visa cards, or gift certificates to the mall, Christmas shopping, and they have been wildly successful with these for the last couple of years. And they just continue to get better and better. And it's a very simple formula. And here's the best thing, is not only that, but these trade-up programs, these equity programs, all of these to the buy list match, right? Because the whole thing about the wholesale piece of this is you're getting ready to go to the auction and buy that same car, right? So, I know, again, I'm that auction guy, but here's the thing, right? If we can be more efficient on the retail side, it creates more efficiency on our side of the business as well, in wholesale. Because I'll tell you, there's one thing that all of us, and I see a couple other guys from some other facilitators of wholesale are in the room, and it's frustrating for us because our marketplace gets affected by bad decisions in retail too. When cars get left sitting around, you expect us to be able to sprinkle fairy dust on it and make it worth $4 grand more than it is, right? And that's just a hard reality. But the bottom line is, if you look at our market today, whether it's brick and mortar or whether it's virtual, whether it's phone applications, half the cars really aren't for sale because they're overpriced. But we take them anyway because the last thing we want to do is insult them. So we take them and we post them, and our buyers look at them, and we'll get some, emails and texts once in a while. What are you guys smoking? I mean, come on, these guys, this thing's not worth that. We know it. We get it. Believe it. We do. But right now, that is the marketplace. But we can all get better, right? And it all starts right here. That decision, whether it's a good one or a bad one, starts when somebody puts that first number on the car, right? So the more times that we're doing this and we're being efficient in these three areas, I know it sounds crazy that we're taking, but we're really not. All we're doing is we're getting more efficient on the front, so the business that we do, now the cars are for sale. I'd rather have 80 or 90% and less of them, but 80 or 90% of them are priced for sale. That creates a very, very, very viable marketplace for us. And both buyers and sellers, they win. So all I want you to think of when you look at these, and these look much better before we went to the, these were like wheels with neat things on them, but the graphics aren't that good on the phone. But basically, when we talk about changing habits, right? And I'm not saying, look, the buying online, the buying in lane, the wholesalers, that's never going to go away. But the less that the dealer has to do here and the more efficient they can do here, they're going to be more profitable, right? When they do have to go to the auction, when they do have to log on to one of our sites, they are going to be more aggressive because they've already done all of those first three procedures through appraisals, through the service lane, through the CRM. They've exhausted all of those areas where there's a deal attached 100% of the time, to fill their front-end needs. But here's the other thing. With all these trade-ins coming in, where do you think they're going to end up, right? And if they're done the right way, and they're done well, they're going to be price right. So it's going to create both, a better, more efficient retail side, but also for us on the wholesale side. So we're all for it. I know it sounds a little crazy at first glance, but it makes sense for us too. It really does. So, and this one looked a lot better too before we had to use it on the iPhone. So one thing when you think about what's kind of the next thing, right? When you look at where we've come, and I was just talking about inventory management systems. Just, back in the day, I think, there might have been 1,000 dealers across the country that either had, our system or Dale system or others, and now there's well over 15,000. And if you look at digital retailing, if you look at Car Gurus, Cars.com, don't worry about it, don't worry about it, we're fine. So one of the last pieces is this real-time wholesale that many of you in this room are playing with. You're either providing it, or some of you are dealers who are starting to use it. And one area I want you all to really think about where this could be most effective for you. When you go back and you look at it from the dealer's perspective, and those of you that have these, you go back and you look at your win rates or your win reports, or look to book, I think is one of them in VR, right? So you can see, okay, we've appraised 200 trades this month. We've won 110. Great, high five, 55% win rate, that's outstanding, right? But here's the thing, when you start to flip that, right? When you look at the trades that you've won, you're going to find that 80% of those trades that you've won are going to fall into a couple of buckets. They're core cars, which means they're cars that are really good for you, that you always seem to have a need for, right? And then there's these market performers that it made perfect sense for you guys to chase it because they were all retail, right? And then there's this other bucket, about 20% of those where they were bad for, what I call bad for the cars that we do with this. You either had too many, the market had too many, or they're just a bad car for you. There's such thing as a bad car, So those are the ones that should be the wholesale car. Because if you were to take that 80-20 funnel and flip it, you find that 80% of your wholesale loss in your frontline agent comes from those bad for me cars and the duplicates. So how do we win more without taking bigger risks, right? Just on that small little bit that you're just not sure of, or better yet, we're going back to the customer with a really conservative number because we have learned our lesson, but that's not helping us from a retail perspective because I still got to put 14 and 15 more Nissans on the street to get my MPA money for the board, right? So what do? Right? We end up taking these crazy chances, and they always, most of the time, they come back about us in the hands. So now, there's us and others with these real-time wholesale portals that give you the chance to get outside of that box, right? Find a home for those cars that have been a little worrisome, and maybe get a number that you can go work with your customer that will, number one, still put a deal together, but number two, take the risk out of it for you, right? And that's to get a check writer. To get a check writer, and that's, I'm not talking about picking up the phone and calling 2 or 3 wholesalers, right? Because what are they going to do with it? Well, they'll probably sell it to somebody right in your market. So number one, you're going to be competing with that car again real soon. Nothing worse than that. Number two, they're probably just going to ship it down to an auction where they're carrying, 80 or 90 numbers, and they try and fill them every week, and they run them. So that just means you didn't get what the car was really worth, or all that you could have bought. And not only that, your chances of winning that deal are slim to none, because we all know that number is going to be low, right? So all of these things are out there now that can get you 300, 400, 500 miles instantly. Scan with a few photos and a hit of a button can get you into a buyer's market that we've never had before, and can communicate in real time and get you a number that you can go back to your customer with, and you can use and know that that check will be there and that car will be gone. You can collect your retail deal and move on to the next one. So when you think about all the efficiencies that we have out there, take in the DMSs, which if anybody's a fan of the DMS, then you're in the money. We got to mention it because it is technically technology, but it's overpriced technology. CRM, inventory management systems, all of these digital marketing avenues as far as the Car Gurus, the Auto Trader, and all of these. But if you start to look at all that, that was all on the retail side, right? And so that technology revolution has turned into an evolution for retail, right? I don't think anybody could admit that retail is so much better. I mean, we're so much better at it. You think about all the things we've gone through as an industry, and you can still do what we do and be profitable. It's amazing. That's why we should get a bunch of car guys and girls to run this damn country, in my opinion. Because there's no better business people. There's nobody that can stretch a buck further, right? And be more efficient and get better return on investment than car people, in my opinion. But that whole evolution, that started as a revolution, turned into evolution. Now this revolution is doing the same thing, but it's shifting over to wholesale. Because it is still the one part, if you look at everything that we've done, from inventory management to CRM, the equity mining, really farming, your customer base, and driving up those retention numbers so we can get that fairy tale of, okay, I'm not going to sell you one car, I'm going to sell you 10 cars. I'm going to sell all your kids' cars and, your whole family. We're actually getting pretty good at that. But if you think about the one area where there's huge improvement and an opportunity to be really efficient, and it's in wholesale. And it's going to start with the ability to, limit the number of times the car has to move. Take away that risk of shipping the car, letting it sit for a week or 2 weeks, or whatever the case may be, to run and sell it, and everything's down. Because it's not only the industry, and it's not the fact that there's a few of us doing this now. You look at what's coming up, right? The millennials are going to be taking over dealerships, and where do they live? Right here, right? We're talking about this out front. I mean, I can watch my kids be in one room of the house, another one in the other room of the house, and they don't even talk, they'll text each other. It drives me crazy. But it's the God's honest truth. So, as you're, preparing for whether you're a fellow vendor like myself, or whether you're a dealer in this room, just, keep in mind everything that we talked about today and everything that I showed. If you don't have it, you probably do, is what I'm saying. So go back, check out your CRM, ask around. If you don't think you have any of the tools that were mentioned, trust me, I think you probably do in one way, shape, or form. And if you don't, you can look around. But most of you do have an inventory system, management system, CRM, all that stuff. Vendors and other providers and wholesale folks in this room. This isn't, this wake-up call has become for a while, and I think all of us need to figure out where we can find a home in this new efficiency that's coming. And this, the revolution's here, now it's becoming a revolution very, very quickly. So our job is to figure out how do we do, what we do as well as we can to fit into this new process and this new model that's coming. And the good news is it's more efficient for both sides. So, it's going to be a win-win for everybody. And that way we can all still have jobs, in 10, 15, 20 years instead of a bunch of robots doing what we're doing. So that's all I have. If anybody have any questions, thank you so much for hanging in there.